Hello everyone. My name is Amy Sutherland. I work at Hymans Robertson, and I'm currently training to be an actuary. As Charlie said, I did a Masters of Mathematics at Swansea University between 2010 and 2014. So I'm hoping today just to give you a bit of a flavour of what an actuary does, and then also something that you might be able to look into as a career after you finish a mathematics degree. So firstly, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what an actuary does do. So as Dr. Wright said, actuaries do work in insurance, and we also work in pensions, investment, banking, and corporate finance. So there's lots of things you can get involved in, and particularly once you qualify as an actuary, there's an absolute ton of avenues that you can take. So an actuary tends to look at risk events and understand the probability of various things happening. For instance, COVID or different financial market events such as a recession. So we look at the probability of those things happening, and then we also look at the financial impact of that on, say, companies or clients. So for instance, I work with a lot of pension schemes to understand the financial impact of things. So some of the skills that you need to have to become an actuary, obviously it's very mathematical, so good maths and analytical skills, but it's also really crucial that you've got good communication and management skills as well. So a lot of the work that I do is taking all these really heavy mathematical topics and statistical modelling, etc., to people that don't even necessarily have a GCSE or A level in mathematics. So they really don't know any of the maths behind it, and I still have to get across to them sort of what the impact is, what the cost is, what they need to do to make sure that they're in a good situation. So that then also involves a lot of problem solving as well. So hence the points about being creative and adaptable as well. In terms of qualifications, I think actuaries tend to have, I think, to start taking the exams, a B at A-level mathematics, and then preferably you need a first or second class degree in a numerate subject such as maths, actuarial sciences, other sciences, or business or economics, that sort of thing. Once you graduate, or depending on if you're taking the actuarial science degree, you will start working towards becoming an associate or a fellow of the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. And the only difference really between those two, apart from a few exams, is that fellows tend to specialise in a particular industry. So for instance, I specialise in pensions and a bit of the investment as well. In terms of starting salary, graduate roles for an actuary, an actuarial consultant that is, tend to start around 25 to 35,000 pound a year, which is quite nice, and that just depends on where you're located. So London's obviously a little bit higher because it's expensive, and then also the role that you have. So if you have a few exemptions from an actuarial sciences degree, you might get a little bit more, as a lot of the pay increases that you get in the first few years of being an actuarial trainee consultant do revolve around the exams that you pass. Once you qualify, this tends to be up to about 40 to 55,000 pounds a year, and that does depend a little bit on how long it takes you to qualify. So if you've got a lot of experience when you qualify because you've taken a little bit longer with exams, you might be at the higher end, and then it also depends on, again, location. So if you're in London versus elsewhere. Senior actuaries and then above and beyond, 60k plus, we get some pretty good benefits. So stuff like car allowances, good pensions. Obviously, being in pensions, you'd expect that, hopefully. And then, yeah, once you get to a partner or senior director level, you can earn well over six figures. And then one of the other things that we always like to mention is that actuaries or the actuarial profession is generally considered really quite one of the best professions almost in terms of the pay that you get for the hours that you work and the stress levels that come with the job. Pretty good in terms of hiring, and I've personally found that I think at least once you get your foot in the door as well and get a graduate role, you're pretty in a pretty secure profession as well, which is really nice. So moving on, so my journey at and after university, I did a pure mathematics degree at Swansea University. I did a few modules in probability and statistics, and then I did a dissertation in probability, so 0, 1 laws, but I won't go into too much detail on that now. I got a 2-1 in my degree, and following that, I then got a graduate role as an actuarial analyst initially at a company in Cardiff called Quantum Advisory in the pensions industry. So an actuarial analyst is slightly different to an actuarial consultant, and tends to focus on the technical or more mathematical side of the actuarial profession. So using a lot of spreadsheets for data analysis, statistical modelling, and then producing reports on that as well. So I will say that IT skills are pretty important. Not to worry if you don't necessarily have them, but it is incredible what Excel can do. So anything you do know about it is always good. I then, after a couple of years as an analyst, I moved into consulting. So what this involved was continuing that data analysis and statistical modelling work as well. And then those reports that do get produced on that, I then started taking those to clients and explaining to them the impact on them, what they need to think about, the cost to them, the next steps, any risks that need to be managed. As well. So just a lot of considerations and really getting through to the client and trying to help them solve any problems they might have. And I'll give some of the examples of that in a little bit as well. I also do a lot of work on developing products and propositions, again, which I'll talk about in a minute. But for instance, I help develop the governance proposition, and also I do a lot of work on climate change at the moment in my current job, which is a massively developing field and one that actuaries are looking to expand into as well and already doing work in. So that's really interesting too. So I think if I move on now. Currently, as I said, I've moved from Quantum Advisory to Hymans Robertson, so still in pensions. So I help companies around the UK think about the pension schemes that they either already have got set up for their employees or that they want to set up for employees as well. So what this means is, if you think about when somebody retires, you've got to think about how long they're potentially going to live after retirement, and then if a company is paying out a pension to that person for those years after retirement, you've got to think about how long that person's going to live. And then as a result of that, how much over that person's lifetime that's going to cost the company to pay. And then that kind of nicely leads on to that second bullet there, which is around the fact that people are living longer than ever before, despite COVID. And so it is costing companies quite a bit more to pay these pensions because people are living longer than it was originally expected about 20, 30 years ago as well. So there is a risk element around that because companies don't necessarily have the money to pay for all those additional years worth of pension. So a little bit about transferring that risk as well. And then we also take into account stuff like UK legislation for pension schemes, which is ever changing and always causes some great problems that need to be solved as well. A little bit on the sort of the softer, almost consulting side. I do governance consulting, so that's a bit more on the risk management. I also do quite a lot on trustee boards and how they can be more effective, decision making skills, that sort of thing as well, which is really interesting. If people like me, for instance, quite enjoy the variety of certain of well, I don't suppose it's not maths, but if you want something a bit more varied, then actuaries can get involved in that as well. And then also something that is touched upon in one of the actuarial exams, but I also find really fascinating, which is biases in financial decision making as well. So an example of this is if someone's invested a bunch of money into a stock, that stock's plummeted, they've lost a bunch of money, but they don't want to take it out of that stock because then that means that they have fully lost that money and they think it might go back up again. And that's sort of a financial bias called sunken cost fallacy. So thinking about that and how you can counteract those biases when you're thinking about financial decisions as well. And then finally, more recently, I've been getting involved with a lot of work around climate change, climate risk, and responsible investment. So pension schemes might be impacted by climate change because natural events occurring, natural weather events, impacting people's sort of longevity expectations, so how long they might live. So that impacts sort of the cost of a pension scheme to a company. And then also investment. So I think UK pension schemes account for trillions of pounds worth of investment. So it's really quite important that if all pension schemes in the UK were to invest in good companies, so sort of not fossil fuels, for instance, then they could really make a difference in terms of us moving to what we term a green economy as well. So I do quite a bit of work on that recently as well. And then finally, just some examples of taking the mathematics, some of the maths that you might do as part of your degree, and some of it which you might learn as part of the actuarial studies that you do to become an actuary, and how that fits into my day job, for instance. So there's a lot around probability and statistics. So thinking about the likelihood of different economic scenarios, such as a recession or COVID. There has been an absolute ton of market volatility earlier this year when COVID occurred, with lots of companies and businesses struggling and stocks going up and down all over the place. And that impacts quite a lot of pension schemes. So that's why I've been thinking about this year. Also, probability in terms of longevity and mortality, which sounds a little bit morbid, thinking about the probability of someone dying this year or next or the next. But we do a lot of work around that because, again, it kind of it amounts to a cost for the company. So it's putting a number on that, even if it does seem a little bit morbid. And then also, as Dr. Wright talked about a little bit in the insurance industry, risk events as well, and the probability of something occurring. So many of you might have had holidays booked this year, and you might have had insurance on those holidays. COVID came along, everything got cancelled, and so thinking about how that insurance for you policy for you is priced, and taking into account the risk of an event occurring like this and how much it might cost the insurance company, and then also some financial mathematics as well. So again, if there's a pension to pay in 20 years time, what do I need to, or what does a company need to invest right now, which should hopefully be quite a low amount so that they have that money in 20 years time to pay out to the pensioners. Or similarly, if I want a £30,000 per annum pension to live off in retirement, what do I need to contribute now into my pension pot? So that's just a few examples there. I think I've run over slightly, but hopefully that's been really helpful. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, ask any questions on LinkedIn or via email or now even, I'm more than happy to help as well. So yeah.